All right, so welcome back. Good evening. We are going to have a quick discussion on a couple of things. One is that how to approach the exam in the first place. What is the way of identifying answers? Okay, there's one way of seeing it. The other thing is how to eliminate the wrong answers. These are the two strategies in which you can crack the questions. Ultimately, the questions should be answerable by you by understanding not only the concept but also the way to crack the question itself. It's not simple because we have to find a pattern in the question itself. The way it is structured, there is always a pattern. We once we identify that pattern, it's easier for us to know which are the wrong ones, which we can straight away remove, and which are the right ones potentially based on the logic which ISACA is expecting us to answer the question on. So today we'll talk about domain one. Okay, domain one concepts. This PPT has already been shared with you all, but just for you understanding how this can be used when you are looking at the questions, how you can use this. I will just brief it and then I will take you through some questions also randomly based on domain one and domain two also. So the idea behind sharing this is that these are based on the pattern analysis of the questions which have been asked in both ISACA's past question database as well as understanding the way the questions are made. Because I myself was part of the one of the committees which was there for making questions. The exam content creator they call it. So I was part of that committee once. So I understood that basically these are some ways in which the question is written. So there will be a stem, there will be a standard question, there will be a statement, and there will be a question which will be asked, a query. What is the expectation? And for which there will be four options, out of which one option is correct. This is the way it works, right? So out of these four options, there always will be two wrong answers and two similar looking answers, or which will be confusing for you. This is typically how they structure it. And this is the guideline also which has been given to the question makers, the people who create these questions. This is not done by ISACA themselves. It is done by people who are members, who are past CISA members, who are in good standing. They will be requested. They will be given an opportunity, and they will be writing this to to submit into ISACA. ISACA will review it with their quality standards, and then they will come back with some query and all those things, and then they will finalize this as questions either for a practice question or for the exam question. If they feel this is good enough for an exam question, they will make it as an exam question. Otherwise, they'll just keep it in the practice database. So this is how ISACA makes the question itself. So just to giving a background, and there is a team also at ISACA who is also doing questions across the throughout the year. They will keep making for various exams. So they will be reviewing how the performance of the question was in an exam, how difficult it was, and that is why they call it as a graded rating. It is not a straightforward. They don't give marks based on. It is a graded assessment from 200 to 800 marks. So out of 800, how much you score on a grade, which means if 10 people are taking the same question at the same time or over a period of time, if one question seems to be very tough and people are getting it wrong, that question is graded on the higher side. If you are getting it right, the chances of you getting marks are more. And this is how they have built a logic in the system. So, so having said that, it is crackable. I mean, it is not impossible to do this. People are able to pass, which means that they are able to understand the concept and also understand what ISACA expects from the answer. So, how to identify this? So, for domain one, what I have done is I've structured it in such a way that you can identify the concepts from the keywords. Ultimately, what will happen? Certain keywords will be there in the question. Those keywords first you have to identify. I'll give you a guideline on a structure how to identify and answer a question within 1 minute, because typically what happens now, 150 questions are there in 4 hours. So roughly 1 minute, less than just about a minute, you have to answer the question within a minute. So how to identify this? Or just about a minute, you have time, but some questions you may require more time, some questions you may require less time. So accordingly, you have to pace yourself also, right? Across the entire 4 hour duration. So you have to have the stamina. It's like running a marathon. You cannot just run everything in one day. So you have to keep practicing. That is why the practice questions are there. Regularly, you have to see that. Over a period of time, you have to see. Um, and come back with the explanation as to how this can be a right answer or a wrong answer in your own mind, because you cannot speak also. You can, when you speak, the others will get distracted, and then the invigilator will come, and or if you are taking it at home, there are more issues which they will raise. So those kind of things are also there. So having said that, what I have done is I have broken down domain 1, domain 2, and so on up to domain 5 into testable concepts which we should know. These are the hardcore concepts which we, as a auditor, where we have to come from, where how to identify the keywords. What are the keywords in each concept or each domain, under each domain? For example, if you are taking ITAF or internal audit, IT audit framework, which is ITAF, there are some standards, there are some guidelines, there are some professional ethics. So what are those? When we talk about guidelines, these are recommendatory. When we talk about standards, these are mandatory. When we talk about ethics, again, we should always apply the ethics. We should not be any deviation from the ethics. That's the ultimate goal of being or following the code of ethics. So as an auditor, we should never fall away from these kind of patterns. So these are certain things. Like another example, audit charter is always approved by the board or the audit committee or a certain committee which is delegated or nominated by the board. And it reflects the purpose, authority, and responsibility, and gives the auditor as complete access or unrestricted access to everything within the domain of the audit. Same way, independence and objectivity is a very core topic. Independence is the freedom from influence, with not being having any influence through somebody else, or if you have done some work in the early past, threats which are there for independence or objectivity will be self-review, which I've done in the past. Familiarity with the process, which you have implemented something and then you are asked to do it. Management participation, where you are asked to do something and then do some activity in the system or implement something in the system, which is again a threat to either independence or objectivity. In the case of objectivity, it is unbiased mindset. We are not having any bias towards anyone or any process. Then we have important concepts called due professional care, where your auditor is not expected to do everything, but at the same time, he has to ensure that due diligence is done, and he considers the possibility of risk, error, fraud, and all those things in the way he functions as an audit. Then we have risk-based audit planning, which is talking about this audit universe, uh, risk assessment criteria, prioritization, approval of plan. Various concepts are there within the domain. Same way, internal audit has various control types. Internal controls are preventive, detective, and corrective in a very broad manner. And this can be subcategorized into administrative, technical, physical, and so on. And again, control frameworks are there which will help us to have a standardization in terms of how we approach the controls. There's COBIT by ISACA. We have NIST, we have ISO 27001 series, and many other frameworks are there. But these are some of the main frameworks. Similarly, we have more concepts on terms of governance and management. Governance, when it comes talking about direction, oversight, and all those things, we are talking about governance. We are talking about strategy. And when it comes to something about execution or doing some activity or something, it is always management. So this distinction you can identify from the keywords, what they're expecting from you. Going to IT strategy and alignment, always alignment of business. IT should always align with business goals, value delivery, risk management, resource optimization, and so on. Same way, we talk about IT balance scorecard or KPIs, which are talking about measurement of an alignment of things. KPIs, which are performance indicators, KRIs, which are risk indicators, and KGI, which are goal or outcome indicators. When it comes to audit sufficiency, of audit evidence, it's always looking at sufficiency, reliability. This is something called SURE, SURRE. Okay, so evidence should always be sufficient, it should be useful, it should be reliant, it should be relevant, and ultimately it should be evidencing what we want to achieve. Ultimately, we should be able to come out with what we want to say. This is the idea behind having it. There are various types of evidence: physical, documentary, analytical, testimonial, and so on. Question themes in domain 1. What are the kind of questions which come in domain 1? So, in terms of audit charter and standards, people generally ask questions in terms of defining the scope, defining the authority, independence, understanding the ITAF, code of ethics, So, if auditor has participated in a system development, what is they supposed to do? What is the first step they are doing? What is the best next step they should do? These kind of things, if they ask, generally, this is the way they structure it. The risk-based audit planning questions will be on what should be the first step, what should be the next step, and so on. So you should understand that a risk follows control, follows the objective, and finally you test it. So risk always starts with planning, understanding the business, then you start planning, then you do risk assessment, then it becomes part of your audit plan. Then when your audit plan is there, then you start doing the audit. Then we ensure the compliance of or the existence and compliance of controls. We look at assertions which are supposed to be there, control objectives, and finally you test it whether it is working effectively and efficiently. Then when it comes to audit program design, again, what should be done before? It will be in the sequence. What should be there before? What should be there after? And these kind of questions will come. Then when it comes to execution, evidence, what will be the kind of evidence for this particular type of audit or this step? What or this particular process? What can be the potential or the best form of evidence? Among these, which are the most reliable evidence? So these kind of questions can be asked. Then we have evidence evaluation. Suppose sampling. This is based on sampling. What kind of sampling should be done? Stratified sampling, non-stratified sampling, judgmental sampling, and so on. Various other parameters. Then audit reporting. When it comes to audit reporting, again, uh, condition, criteria, cause, effect, corrective action. These are the five critical things which should go into a typical audit finding and recommendations. And last but not the least, the follow up. What should be the typical process of follow up, and what should they do in terms of what happens when they give or submit or discuss a particular finding. For example, they discuss a finding and the auditor doesn't agree. What should they do? They agree with it, but they are not able to implement it, or they are not able to meet the deadline. What should they do? Who will be responsible? These kind of questions will be asked on this. So typically, what is the mindset required for taking this exam or for this particular domain? And for the entire exam itself is always think like an auditor. In this domain, identify the risk. What can go wrong? What is it impacting? Is it confidentiality? Is it integrity? Is it availability? Is it AAA model? Where we are in terms of risk, and what can go wrong if this risk is amplified or it is not controlled? Then we have to see what can be the control for it. Is it a preventive control? Is it a detective control? Is it a corrective control? Then is it available? Is it present? Then we test the control. Does it actually work? Is it proper? Is it enough? Is it sufficient? Then we evaluate the evidence. What is the evidence which says that the control is working properly or not? Then on top of that, when we discover this, then we write a finding, we discuss with our manager, or then we take it up with the senior manager and the management itself, and the auditee discusses, and finally we come to a common consensus to what can be done to fix it, which will be our recommendations, and finally we will be verifying whether it got fixed or not. So just for a reference, one example, like these are the various type of sampling. So this you can use as your cheat sheet for understanding what kind of sampling techniques are there, for what it is used, and what are the examples in which, or the scenarios in which this can be used. Okay, so there is always scope for more improvement. As you see more questions, you will understand a pattern which is getting formed in the way the question is asked. You will understand that as we see more questions, right? So that is how it works. So what is the auditor's decision tree? Or how can an auditor decide how to answer a question? Which I will show you also a very shortcut. Within 60 seconds, you can identify within just 4 steps. This is little, this one, I have just concised that into 4 shorter steps. This is specifically for domain 1. But what I will be giving is a kind of a framework for you to identify the answer, or come to a consensus, or come to a understanding of the answer within 4 steps or within a short period of time. That's the idea behind doing that. So typically the auditor's decision tree looks like, first step will be who should be the person who is supposed to act in the question. Is it the auditor, or is it the auditee, or the management? If it is talking about implementation of something, always know that the auditor will never be responsible for implementation. If it is talking about audit phase or identifying something, where are we in the audit life cycle? Are we in planning, execution, reporting, or follow up? We have to always visualize that in our head, because ultimately the question will be answered by just eliminating and identifying the right answers. It is talking about audit objectives, then we talk about either it is compliance, risk, or what is there. Is it talking about evidence or is it talking about a control? Then finally, it can be in terms of what is missing. Is it independence, is it evidence, is it scope, is it follow up, any of those things which can be missing in the question. So again, another way of eliminating or identifying the right answer. Last but not the least, always look at the answer which is strengthening our evidence, maintaining our independence. At end of the day, auditors should always ensure that evidence is very strong. We maintain our independence at any time. We are unbiased. Okay. We are maintaining integrity. We are focusing on the risk. Ultimately, everything is risk-based audit planning. So, and risk-based auditing itself. So, everything is focused on risk and control. This is our language, right? As an auditor, this is our language. And finally, we should avoid doing any action as an auditor, because generally management action is done by the management or the operations people. It will never be done by the auditor. So when auditor is, the question, the option is telling that auditor is requested to do something or auditor is asked to do something, obviously it will be wrong answer. Okay, as far as compensating controls are concerned, this is a cheat sheet for understanding compensating controls. Compensating controls are required for 4 different reasons. Wherever job rotation is there, or it's a very small team. The minute we read the word small team, they are looking at compensating controls. If they are looking at something which requires audit trail, again it is compensating control. If they are looking for reconciliation, again compensating control. And last but not the least, if they're talking about an exception or highly unusual or anomaly detection or something like that, again they are talking about a compensating control potentially, which can be identified by from the question itself. So what are the exam traps? Exam traps include auditor lacking independence, something which auditor has done before, or what should he do? Suppose he is already identified as not being independent, what should he do? Okay, so he should typically decline the engagement or disclose the conflict. If he finds control weakness, what should he do? He should evaluate the impact and not sit and blame somebody. If the answer is option is coming, somebody is getting blamed, he will get fired. If something is action happening immediately, typically it will be wrong. Okay. Management is asking auditor to fix an issue. Again, as I told you, auditor will never do a fixing of an issue. He will always recommend, but he will not implement. Evidence being inefficient or insufficient. So you should gather more evidence rather than remove that completely. So option when it asking something absurd or doing something against the flow of events, don't go by that. Go for the kind of option which is telling to gather more information or escalate the issue or understand the issue more in a better manner. Have a discussion. These kind of questions, if the option is telling, please go for that option. As a general principle, also when system is getting migrated, auditor is not part of the migration. He is only going to do a post implementation review. And last but not the least, whenever you are asked to risk or rank a particular list of risks, there may be 4 options, which are maybe all the 4 may be risk only, but you will be asked to know which of the one which is the highest, most significant. These kind of questions will ask. So we have to identify which will give maximum impact in terms of the for the organization.